Hello everyone. Today we are going to be dehydrating kale and making kale powder. And I plan on using the kale powder in smoothies. So I have here 2 bunches of kale and I have removed them from the stalks. And I also have this, let's see, it is organic green kale, washed and ready to eat. And it is a 16-ounce package. And what happened is I did grocery pickup from Walmart. I ordered 3 bunches and they only had 2, so they gave me the 2 bunches and then they gave me this for the same price as 1 bunch would cost. So, and it happened to be 99 cents right now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, as I mentioned, I've already removed it from the stalks. And I've washed all of it, and I'm just going to lay it out on the dehydrator trays, and then I will be dehydrating this at 90 degrees, so much lower temperature than what I typically use when I dehydrate, but it's good to do greens at a low temperature. I'm hoping that I'll be able to fit all of this into my Cosori. There's not a whole lot of space in between trays, and I have 6 trays, so we'll see what happens. If need be, I'll end up switching and using my Nesco. The challenge is that I have something else on my Nesco right now, and I just bought this and I want to dehydrate it as quickly as possible after buying it. So generally when I buy, especially something like this that's more fragile, I try to dehydrate it right away. So I'm going to go ahead and load up all of the trays, and I'll let you know if I was able to fit in all of the kale or not. Okay, so I ended up using my Nesco for more than half of the kale because I was having a hard time with the Cosori with getting really heavily loaded trays put in without disturbing the tray below. So anyway, I'm going to set these for 90 degrees and I'll come back in about 5 hours and check on them. I'll see you then. Okay, the dehydrator's been going about 5 hours, and before I show you what things look like, I want to correct something I said. I said that I was setting it at 90 degrees on both the Cosori and the Nesco. The lowest temperature is 95 degrees, so that's what I have it at. And you can see, you probably can't really tell, but they're still extremely damp. There's parts that are, you know, obviously more dry than others, but it has a long ways to go. So I'm going to be running this overnight. And just to show you the Nesco, it's kind of a similar effect. So it's not going to hurt at all to keep these going, again, at 95 degrees overnight, and hopefully they'll be dry in the morning. But when you're drying at such a low temperature, it does take a while. So I'll bring you back in the morning and show you what things look like after I'm going to set the Cosori at another 10 hours, and the Nesco will keep going that time as well. I'll see you in the morning. Hello everyone. It's now been 15 hours. And at first glance, it looks like it's done, but I can feel, if I touch, I can feel some places that still have a little bit of moisture to them. So I really expected it to be very dry by now. But keep in mind that I have been dehydrating this at 95 degrees, and I think that's why it's taking as long as it is. The same is true, even more true on my Nesco. I'm not sure if it's because I had things piled up higher or what. So anyway, needless to say, I'm going to put this in for more time, and I'll bring you back when it's all done. See you in a little while. Hello everyone. The kale is now completely dry. You can kind of hear how it crunches. And I am using my kale to make kale powder to use in smoothies. You could just put the kale like this into a jar if you wanted to, but I'm going ahead and powdering it. And so I've powdered most of it already, but I want to show you how I make the kale powder. So right now I have almost, these are half pints. So basically I'm a little bit shy of a pint of kale powder. So that's how much yielded I had. I started with 2 bunches and then a 1 pound package of kale. And this is how much it reduced down to. So now let's talk about though how to make the powder. I'm going to show you how I do it and then also talk about how much I plan to use in smoothies. So there's a couple of things that I am using. I have a coffee grinder, a canning funnel, and I have a strainer. So I'm just going to walk you through how I use those things. So first of all, I just find the funnel helps me to keep from making a huge mess, whether I'm putting kale into the coffee grinder or whether I'm putting the powdered kale into this. I like to use the funnel for both. So I'm going to start off with taking the kale and just rubbing it between my hands into the coffee grinder. Now that's not absolutely necessary, but I found that it does help me to grind it easier if I first crumble it. Another thing that it does is it helps me find stems like this. I kind of discover those as I'm crumbling it in my fingers. And the reason why that matters is I'm finding those just don't want to powder up. You can see I have this bowl of stems and they did not powder well when I put them into the grinder. So if I notice any while I'm crumbling them up, I just go ahead and take them out. Some other times after I've powdered it, as I'm straining it, I find out that there's some stems in there and then I just separate them out. But using, just kind of breaking it up with my hands first seems to help. And then I just grind it. You can see them. I don't know if you can see, but the pieces are still fairly big, so I'm going to grind it up a little bit more. Okay. I'm going to move the jar that I'm putting the kale into over here, and you can see I've got the funnel, and I'm just going to put the strainer on and dump the powder from the coffee grinder. And by the way, if you don't have a coffee grinder, you can use a blender or a food processor or whatever you have. Okay, so another thing that once you dump it in, the powder goes right out, but sometimes it needs a little help, just using a spoon, shaking it, that type of thing. Okay, now you can probably see that there's some stems that were in here that didn't grind up, so I'm just going to take those out and throw them in. And I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of this little bit of powder back into the grinder and give it another try. And whatever then doesn't go through, I'll just toss because it's not that much. So let me go ahead and put that into the coffee grinder. Okay, and I can see this, it might just be because it was down low or tougher parts, but it looks to me like that did not grind up too much better. But I'm going to see what will pour through, and then I'm going to end up calling it done with whatever doesn't make it through. Okay, so you can see I have some little bits that didn't make it through. They would technically be fine to put in there because they probably rehydrate fine in smoothies. But those are probably tough little bits, and I'm just going to remove them. Okay, so you can see that I have just under, these are not completely full, so a little less than a pint of powder. And as I mentioned, I plan on using them to make smoothies, and I will use probably only about a teaspoon of the powder in each smoothie to replace fresh kale. So it's like you can think, well, this didn't yield very much, which is very true, but what it did yield is very potent. And since I dehydrated it at 95 degrees, it has retained most of the nutrients. So it's a great way to have some shelf-stable kale. When you powder things, it doesn't have as long as a shelf life as if I had kept it whole. The more you break it down, the shorter the shelf life. But it will still easily last 6 months to a year in powdered form. So this is a great thing to have on hand. You just don't want to do massive amounts, like have several quarts of it or something ground up all at once. What you can do is you can put the kale that you have not powdered into jars and seal them, and then take out enough to, let's say, for a month or whatever, and grind that up. I probably will actually use this within a month or 2 months at the most, and so I'm not worried about it. So, you know, when you think about this, there's probably, this isn't a full pint, so I'm going to guesstimate that it's about 65 teaspoons of powder. And so that's basically 65 servings of kale that I have in these 2 little half-pint jars. So I think that's pretty awesome. If you are building a prepper pantry and you have limited space, I definitely recommend this as one way to add a ton of nutrition to your pantry in a small amount of space. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you would like the video, and of course if you would also subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much. Have a great day.